There are very few modifications that you do to an off-road truck that give you more bang for your buck than just simply airing down your tire pressure to a nice, low, soft pressure. This gives you a massive increase in off-road performance on all types of terrain, not to mention the fact that, it also makes it softer to ride on. But the big increase, I think, is in snow and rocks, my two favorite terrain types. So today we're going to go over to Idaho. We're going to meet up with my buddy Dave from the Dirthead Shed. We're going to hit some snowy, rocky trails, and we're going to start around 4.5 PSI. We've been wheeling 5 minutes and you're already not disappointing me, Mr. Dave. Dave's Mazda is on a set of 40-inch Mickey Thompsons, and he's on a traditional beadlock. And up until the last 2 years, I have always ran beadlocks on my off-road rigs, and it is such an important modification if you want to do deep snow, much less do snowy rocks like what we're doing here. You've got to have maximum traction to be able to slip and slide your way over this stuff. And in order to get that maximum traction, you've got to have super low tire pressure. So I'm on a set of 39-inch Cam 3s that I have grooved for a little extra traction, and then we're starting at 4.5 PSI on these Method Bead Grip wheels. The Bead Grip is a one-piece wheel, unlike a bead lock, and it has these special machined grooves that allow the tire to stay on the wheel at very low pressures. Now, by the end of the video, I want to basically run these at 0 and see if we can get the tire to walk off the bead in any way. This bonus line was completely optional, and honestly, we had no business even trying it. We should probably have a minimum of a aired down 42 or something, but Dave and I we have an appetite for destruction, and we wanted to give it a shot and see if we could weasel our way up this really slippery, kind of slightly off camber section. The more attempts that Dave had to make it up this thing, the more his tires turned this snow into like a Wendy's Frosty. The traction was absolutely horrific, but surprisingly, I still had enough traction to break something, and you're going to see that here in just a second. While you're watching me try to navigate this obstacle, pay attention to the sidewall of the tire. We're at 4.5 PSI. We are not on a bead lock, and look at the kind of impact this is taking without losing the bead. You just watched me break the little intermediate shaft on the front end that's between the front diff and the front passenger side CV axle. And this is the last little bit of Toyota that's up there. Amazingly, it is held through a ton of turmoil, but finally, that thing gave up the ghost. I think that I probably weakened it when I was on Ultimate Adventure, and I haven't been super hard on it since Ultimate Adventure. And this I mean, that wasn't really that much pressure for it to just grenade like that. So I think that I probably already had stressed it out at some point. But anyway, now I'm going to take it to my friends at Chaotic 4x4 here in Tacoma, and they're going to fix the front end for me while I continue to build out my Samurai. And then I called around and found a shop called the Overland Truck Store, who thinks that they can fix the electrical issues that I've been having with the Toyota Tacoma. All the lights on the dash, my crawl control hasn't worked since 2,000 miles. The dealer couldn't figure this stuff out. But a humongous thanks to Chaotic 4x4 in Tacoma and the Overland Truck Store up in Bremerton. They got the Tacoma back on the road while I was continuing to make content for you guys. And now we can head up to Canada to meet up with my buddy Sean, and we can finish testing out these bead grips. The whole point of the video is to drop the air pressure down to next to nothing and show that it's going to stay on the wheel. So we didn't get to do that with Dave because I broke. Everything's fixed now. I'm up here in Canada with my buddy Sean. We're gonna go find some really deep snow, and I'm just gonna keep dropping the air pressure until we either A, lose a bead, or B, we get to 0. All right, buddy, I'm all ready to go.
All right, see how we do.
We are at 2 PSI. So this is where we're gonna start our test. A little aggressive, some might say, but I've had these at extremely low tire pressures before, extremely low, without issue. I do think that how much success you have with these wheels is gonna completely be dictated, not completely, it is definitely gonna have some sort of correlation with the compound of the rubber on the tire. So the higher quality and the softer the rubber, it's probably gonna be able to go lower without having any issues. These are super cheap 37s. I don't know if they're gonna be able to hold on at this pressure, but this is why we're testing these things, is to see how much is dictated by the compound of the tire and how much is dictated by the design of the wheel. Even with the lowest gears that I could buy, this Toyota is not geared quite low enough for a 39. It just did not like the 39 on the highway, so I decided to throw a budget set of 37s because I'm going to be selling this Tacoma later this year, and I want to make sure that the next owner really loves the truck, and this truck performs really, really good with like a 37 or a 38. So anyway, these cheap tires are sticking to these wheels just fine, but very shortly we did run into an issue where it was slowly seeping air out of the front driver's side tire. So we threw a little bit of air back in it. We continued to go up the trail, and sure enough, it aired back down again. So I decided to just leave the air out of it. We'll just see how far we can push it and how much we can climb with no air in it and see if it ever comes off the bead. I mean, we're here to test the bead grips. What better test than just running it literally at 0 and seeing if the tire's gonna walk off. And after a fun night of breaking trail with my buddy Sean, it was the morning and it was time to do a leak down check. Good morning. On the way up, the front driver tire went flat again. And I just kept driving on it. I mean, could have got out and filled it, but I'm not concerned about like ruining the tire or anything like that. But I was curious if it was gonna hold all the way up here. So this last, I don't know how many kilometers, but because I don't know how to measure in that metric, but we have been going uphill for a long time with a completely flat tire. And now what I wanna do, well actually, hang on real quick. Everything is still on the bead, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the door. We're just going to fire up the truck and we're going to see what the tire pressures say and see if we had any leak down overnight with the other wheels. After I fired up the truck and I could see what the tire pressure sensors were reading, 2 of them were a little bit low. They both showed 1 PSI, but once I like moved the truck over and we filled up that front driver's side tire, the other 3 all said 2, exactly like they did the night before. And then the rest of the day, they measured 2 the whole rest of the day. So I think this was some sort of like a fluke or something having to do with them just sitting in the cold. But anyway, the other 3 tires didn't lose pressure at all, even the whole rest of the day, which I highly recommend you go to my buddy Sean's channel and check out his video of this trip. We were plowing some crazy deep snow. It was a really fun time. Anyway, let's go back to the shop and we'll take a look and see what's wrong with this front driver's side tire. We're back down to 2. And by the way, this has been holding ever since I got back from Canada at full pressure, 0 issues. So there's no holes in the tire, that's for sure. It's not like we're leaking out of the tire somewhere. But I sprayed the outside and the inside, and as you can see, we got bubbles. So it's definitely leaking from that part of where the tire connects to the wheel. And my guess is that there's some nasty in there. So one of the beautiful things about the bead grip, as opposed to a traditional bead lock, is I'm going to take this to the local tire store, have them dismount it, clean it up, and then I can go about my day while they're getting this fixed for me, and I don't have to have a tire machine in order to fix it. This is a traditional truck wheel, this is a Method bead grip, and this is a bead lock. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you how to save the most money that I've found on Method wheels. So let's start with a traditional truck wheel. This has a small machined surface that's like a backstop essentially, that doesn't really hold the bead in place. It kind of locks it in place, but it's very easy to overcome with very little force. So as soon as you get below like 10 PSI, there's a certain amount of force that it's going to take to overcome 10 PSI that is going to then pop the tire's bead off of the inside of the wheel. And what usually happens in my experience is you get a guy who's going to get down to single digit tire pressures, me, and even with traditional truck wheels, I've aired down below 10 many times. Sometimes I can get away with it, sometimes I can't. And what usually happens is you'll hit a few rocks, you're like turning on an obstacle or something like that, and it burps a little bit of air out. So from 9, which is where you think you are, you now just went down to like 5, just like that. Because it'll split the bead off just for a second, just a whole bunch of air comes out, and then it seals. Now you're at 3, and then before you know it, you have a completely flat tire. And sometimes I've even seen the tire come completely off. If someone's going on a dirt road fast enough, it's really low, they hit a bump, and then boom, it just shoots the whole thing off. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. Now, the step up from this is, well, the traditional step up from this is a bead lock. And the inner bead is the exact same as a traditional truck wheel, but the outer bead is actually clamped down with a bead lock ring. And this makes sure you can literally run 0. You can have a complete split tire, and the tire will at least stay on. The inner bead will come off usually. If you have a completely flat tire and you're like trying to drive it to get back to civilization or something, a lot of times you'll lose that inner bead. And I've seen maybe 3 or 4 times ever where someone is wheeling and they've lost the inner bead, usually on a really cheap bead lock. But there's advantages and disadvantages to both of these, believe it or not. With a bead lock, it's not DOT approved. So if you're in a place where they're really strict and they enforce mud flaps and bumper heights and all that other stuff, they're probably enforcing bead lock rules. And to my knowledge, there aren't any bead locks other than those Rock Monsters, which are a double bead lock wheel that are DOT approved. Also, this is heavier than a traditional truck wheel. This also won't, you're going to have a very difficult time finding an off-road shop that'll touch these. Most chains, they just say officially they will not mount and dismount beadlock wheels. Forget a normal tire shop, right? Whereas with a traditional truck tire or truck wheel, you can take it to any tire place in the country. And if you have a flat and you're on a trip with your kids and you don't want to get out and get greasy fixing your own stuff, you can just take this to a tire shop, go get some lunch, and when you come back, you've got a brand new tire on it. You can't do that with a normal bead lock, which, I mean, that makes it for a lot of people, they were gonna lean this direction. And this is where I think the bead grip is so brilliant, because this is one piece. It's just one part number. There's no bolts, there's none of that stuff. There's no bead lock rings. This is lighter than a bead lock. You're gonna be about the same weight as what a traditional truck wheel is because it's just machined differently. That's the only difference here. But as you saw, you can still air down super, super low. There are so many benefits to this because you can take it to a normal tire shop and they will service it for you if you have a flat tire. So you don't have to worry about having a tire machine or whatever in order to mount and dismount yourself. And as you saw, I mean, you can get this down to 0 and have the beads stay on there, at least in my experience. I'm not gonna say that's good for all vehicles, but I have had 3 different tires on those wheels now, and with all 3 of them, I've been able to get down to 0, and I have never once lost a bead on the bead grip. This changes a lot, in my opinion. And I've seen other solutions, which would be really good if this didn't exist. There's another company, and I'm not gonna pick on anybody, but they have bolts that run through some O-rings, and it basically holds the bead in place with some bolts that run right behind the tire. If this technology didn't already exist, the bead grip technology, I would think that that's brilliant. But you've got to worry about O-rings, you have extra hardware, all that other stuff. This is literally one part number. There's not much to go wrong here. Now, that said, is this a perfect solution for everybody? I think this is a perfect solution for 99% of people. The 1% of people that this is not a perfect solution for is gonna be hardcore rock crawlers. I mean, this could potentially hold up, like if you're racing and all that other stuff, but I know for sure this will. If you have a race wheel that has a big consumable, plate on the outside, essentially, I mean, you can look at this thing, it is ragged, and this is only from me using it for like 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 seasons of hard use has really done a number on this. Imagine after like 10 years of hard use. I don't know how long the outside of one of these bead grip wheels is gonna last if you are literally using a trailered vehicle with these. If you're someone who drives on the highway and you wanna be a weekend warrior and go do Rubicon and Moab and Johnson Valley, but still drive home, I think that for those kind of people, 99% of the people watching, this is the perfect solution. For everybody else, for the rock crawler, the meathead, guys like me who have a Samurai that's a full-time off-road truck, having a traditional beadlock still has value. Now, if you want to save a ton of money, I highly recommend you check out Onyx Off-Road. And this is not like some crazy pitch, I'm telling you. They just released this new like elite partner program with their elite partners, and Method is one of them. They have exclusive discounts in the industry that you are not going to find anywhere else, and you can save a crap load of money. So if you just get the basic Onyx software, which is what I've been preaching for years because I really like it, it's 29 bucks. And if you use our coupon code, you save 20% off of that. So it's even cheaper. You can do the same thing with the Elite Partner Program. It's $100 a year. You get some extra benefits of elite membership, like private land data and all that, but you also get discounts on all the parts that we buy anyway. Yukon geared axle, Method, those are like the 2 most important ones to me because wheels and ring and pinions are very expensive parts when you're building multiple vehicles like I am. So, and then if you want to save 20% off of that $100, use our coupon code. Now you're investing even smaller, and then you get those discounts for a year with all of these big brands that they've signed up with. So the pitch is over. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you see the value in these like I have. I really see a ton of value in these bead grips, and I think that over the next couple years, we're gonna see these blow up because it is brilliant.